Last week, the first race of 2014 for GP2 got underway, and it was Zdana Radovojevich who took advantage of Henry Watzel, Paolino Tomaselli's and Gabriel Gomez's troubles to take her first ever win, whilst in DTM it was chaos at Brno in the mixed conditions, which saw Balint Zolga take his second career win and Ethan Sermon take the lead in the Drivers' Championship. Now it is on to the popular Istanbul Park circuit in Turkey. Can Balint Zolga continue his form, or will anyone stop him? Find out in this week's edition of the Feeder Series Roundup. So welcome then to episode 4 of the Feeder Series Roundup. In this week's edition we'll be taking a look at what happened in DTM over at Istanbul, with GP2 taking a week break before their second round. Last time in Brno it was carnage throughout the field, and it saw a great recovery drive from Balint Zolga, who came back from the slump at the new Hockenheim and the collision he had with Joel Hutter during the race to take his second career win. Can he continue that form into Turkey? Well, let's find out, shall we? Here is our DTM narrator Francesco G to take us through the action and also to notify us on the two guest drivers making an appearance in this race.
The third race of the season took place at the popular Istanbul Park circuit in Turkey. Johan Carpenter took pole position from Joel Hutter, determined to make amends from Brno in second, and Evan Byrne rounded out the top three. There were two driver changes for this race, as Red Bull Racing driver Robert Ionescu and her sister Maria Ionescu made a guest appearance at Abt, replacing Andy Higgs and Xavi Perez respectively. At the green, Johan Carpenter maintained the lead in turn 1, with everyone managing to avoid contact. Later in the lap, Viggo Holst took 3 places at the third to last corner to move up to 9th, whilst behind it was 3 wide between Jan Stichthoff and Fitzwater. End of lap 1 and Carpenter lead from Hutter 2nd, Evan Byrne 3rd, Surman 4th, Robert Ionescu 5th, Moko 6th, Campana 7th, and Kirlis made up the point to 8th. Evan Byrne was trying to find a way through on Hutter, but ended up making contact. Thankfully, the pair of them didn't take each other out, and a lap later Evan disposed of Hutter to move up to 2nd after a lock-up from Joel. Roland Mochan was looking to pass Nicolas Zorbach for 11th, but ended up hitting him, and the pair of them were sent into a spin, causing a bit of traffic jam, with Balint Zolga briefly going airborne. The pair rejoined near the back. Hutter would lose another place, this time to the rookie Surman, who passed him at turn 9. Maria Ionescu was clearly still getting to grips with a DTM, and she ended up in a spin at turn 7, dropping to the back of the field. Fitzwater was about to make the move on Maxim Tiktuf at turn 9. However, just as he was about to, he overcooked and spun. To make matter worse, he rejoined dangerously into the path of Carlos Barton, causing Zachary Fitzwater to retire from the race and Barton to pit for repairs. A little bit later, and Michael Mocho attempted to overtake Joel Hutter. However, he locked up his front tires and he headed up, losing 2 places to Robert Ionescu and Liam Campana. Michael Mocho would lose another place a lap later, as in front of him Campana and Robert Ionescu would make contact at the third to last corner, forcing Robert into a spin, which in turn would block Mocho's path and allow Robin Kirlis to overtake him. Moko was lucky not to lost another place to Holst. Speaking of Holst, he would make a mistake at turn 5, locking up and going onto the AstroTurf, dropping him to 11th. While a few seconds later, Balint Zolga would hit Ibobo at turn 9, forcing both into a spin and coincidentally Straight afterwards, they would be joined by Sian Byrne and Viggo Ols, leaving 4 cars waiting to find a gap to rejoin. Evan Byrne had 8 into fellow compatriot Eoin Carpenter's lead at the turn 9. He would go for the move. The pair went side by side down towards the flat out of turn 11, with Eoin having to back out and Evan taking the lead, leaving Eoin in the clutches of Adam Surman. Jans and Roque were battling for 10th, but ended up clipping each other, with both ending up in a spin at turn 9. More contact at turn 9 as Robin Kirlis and Utter came to blows, with Robin spinning into the path of Robert Ionescu, forcing both to pit for repairs. A little bit later, and Carpenter and Surman hit each other at turn 9, which both of them heading into a spin. Surman rejoined without losing place, whilst Carpenter lost a place to Liam Campana a lap later, and there was yet more contact at turn 9, this time it was involving Sean Grant and Victory Bobo, but it was only Grant who ended up spinning. Robert Ionescu and Viggo Ols were next to come blows at turn 9. The pit stop were underway and Evan Byrne came in on lap 17, indicating that he is to stopping. He rejoins in 5th, just behind Michael Mocho. 3 laps later, and Adam Surman comes in for what would be his first and only stop for the race. He was also joined by Liam Campana, with Surman rejoining behind Evan in 5th. Darius Cowell was next to pit and he was looking for a point finish in this race. He rejoined just outside the top 10. 2 laps later, and Maria Ionescu came in her first ever DTM pit stop after making a great recovery through the field after a spin in the early stages of the race. Her pit stop lasted for 6.2 seconds. A little bit later, and Joel Utter would understeer off at turn 5 and ended up in a spin, dropping to 9th place. Whilst behind, Sian Byrne ended up pinning after making contact with Carlos Barton at turn 1. Robert Ionescu was looking to recover after pitting for damage. He overtook the Swiss driver Utter to move up to 6th at turn 1. A little bit later, and Liam Campana would end up spinning after being chopped across by Roland Mouchon, who also ended up spinning. Maria Ionescu on the move trying to overtake Maxim Tiktov, but they ended up making contact with Maxim, losing a rear wheel and thus becoming the second retirement of the day. With Surman coaching, Evan needs to pass Eoin Carpenter and wasn't wasting any time, forcing his way through to take the lead at turn 9. Lap 28, and Robert Ionescu was in for his one and only stop of the race, and he rejoined 13th after his 2.5 second stop. Michael Mocho was looking for a podium in this race and wasted no time disposing of Joel Utter for 6th. A lap later, and Utter came in his one and only stop. It wasn't a quick stop, a 7.5 second stop made him rejoining 13th. Lap 29, after holding up Surman, Eoin Carpenter pitted for his one and only stop of the race. He rejoined 7th after his 7.5 pit stop. Lap 34, and Balin Zolga ran wide at turn 13, dropping him in the clutches of fellow compatriot Roland Mouchon. Lap 35, and Robin Kirlis pitting for his one and only stop. It had been a dreadful race for the Estonian, as he was languishing down towards the back. He would rejoin last after his stop. 2 laps later, and Evan Byrne pitted for the second and final time. However, despite Carpenter holding up Surman, Evan had not been able to build enough of a gap, and as a result, Adam Surman went through to take the lead of the race. Evan rejoined 4th after his stop. Mouchon would make his way up into the top 10 as a fellow Hungarian Balin Zolga ran wide at the infamous turn 8, dropping down a few places in the process. Sadly for Evan Byrne, his chance of coming back through the win went down the toilet as he made contact with Mocho, trying to overtake him at turn 9, and ended up in a spin, dropping him outside the points. Kirli's miserable race continued as he went off at the infamous turn 8, spinning off in the process. Lap 41, and Eoin Carpenter made a move on Victory Bobo at turn 12 to move up to 5th. For the second race in a row, George Roque would end his race on the sidelines as his throttle let him down with just 10 laps to go, making him the third retirement of the day. 2 laps later, and the Irish driver Sean Grant and Sean Byrne would come to blows, with Sean ending up in a spin and Grant going wide. Evan Byrne was trying to ease the pain of what happened a few laps ago and overtook Barinzolga on the run down to turn 11 to move up to 12th. After making contact before, Grant and Sean would hit each other again at turn 1, this time with both spinning off. Maria Ionescu's chance to score points went down the toilet as Roland Mouchon made contact with her, sent both into a spin and ending the final points place to her brother Robert. Evan Byrne tried to take 9th of Joel Utter but ended up hitting him as a result. Evan had to pit for repairs. After 15 laps, Adam Surman in all his third race would come through to take his first ever DTM win, with Leon Campana getting his first podium in second and Mocho rounding out the top 3. Eoin Carpenter wasn't able to convert pole and ended up finishing just behind in 4th, with Cowell 5th, Zorbach 6th, Ibobo 7th, and Robert Ionescu in his one-off appearance and the race in 8th place. The 3 retirements were George Roque, Maxime Titouv and Fitzwater. In the Driver Championship, Adam Surman increased his lead to 10 points ahead of Leon Campana, who moves up to 2nd, while Barinzolga and Robin Kirlis are still tied, all be in a 3rd now.
An amazing race at Istanbul. Not as dramatic as Bruno, but a great race nonetheless, and congratulations to Ethan Sermon on taking his first win ever in only his 3rd race. Well, that is just going to do it for this week. Next week it is not a double bill, but a triple bill, as we will have coverage of the 2 days of pre-season testing at Donington Park for the first ever season of the GP4 Formula E Offline Championship, with the lead being announced recently to be hosted by yours truly. On top of this, we will have coverage of round 2 of the GP4 GP2 Offline Championship and round 4 of the GP4 DTM Offline Championship, with both of them coincidentally at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya in Spain. But until then, I've been JWF1 and I will see you next week.